Hello, and welcome to LHC's Quality Assurance Trainings for 2024. My name is Pascal Valet, and I'll be guiding you through these slides. As always, we know how important your work is to you and how incredibly busy you are, and we do not take asking for your time lightly. That's why we've chosen to figure out the most important quality assurance information to review so that you feel confident that we are delivering exactly what we promise. In this training, we will be reviewing how to identify fraud and financial abuse. So let's start with some definitions. What is fraud? Fraud is any lie, misrepresentation, or false statement made by a person or a group of people with the knowledge that deception could result in unauthorized financial gains or increased benefits. As opposed to abuse. Abuse is any provider action that is an inconsistent practice with sound fiscal, business, or medical standards or result in unnecessary expense to the Medicaid program. It's actually federally mandated that we share this information with you. According to the Deficit Reduction Act of 2005, LRI and LHC are required to give information to our staff about the False Claim Act and the detection and prevention of fraud, waste, and abuse. The False Claims Act provides that any person who knowingly submits or causes to submit false claims to the government is liable for 3 times the government's damages plus a penalty linked to inflation. That means that however much a fraud case sneaks money into you, you are liable to pay back 3 times fold plus an additional fee. We also are going to go over LRI policies and procedures around fraud, waste, and abuse, as well as your employee rights as protected whistleblowers. As I said, the False Claims Act holds a person or entity liable for knowingly filing a false claim, creating or using a false record, using a falsity to avoid an obligation to pay funds, and or conspiring to defraud a federally funded program. The FCA is the primary law protecting government from acts of fraud, and it recovers billions of misused and stolen dollars every year. Now that word knowingly seems very important. Knowingly in this case means having knowledge that the information on the claim is false or acting in deliberate ignorance or reckless disregard of whether the claim is true or false. The FCA also has provisions to protect whistleblowers. A whistleblower is any person who reports fraud, waste, or abuse. Anyone can report fraud committed against the government, and reporters can actually even be rewarded monetarily. On the state level, we have the PA Fraud and Abuse Control Act. It's a state law to detect and eliminate fraud, waste, and abuse of state funds. It's similar to the False Claims Act in that it holds any person or provider liable for knowingly submitting claims for services, supplies, or equipment not rendered, misrepresenting services, supplies, or equipment provided, or double dipping. Other acts that can hold you liable according to the Pennsylvania Fraud and Abuse Act include providing more services than necessary, receiving or soliciting bribes, kickbacks, or rebates, making false statements on provider enrollment applications, or conspiring to receive invalid payment or reimbursement. So what's the big deal? I gave too many services that were offered, or I got a kickback for doing something off the table. What's the big deal? Well, if you're found liable of fraud, you could face civil penalties or criminal penalties, which is a big deal. Your penalties will be determined by the regulation that is violated. That could be state or federal, and you could be separated from participation in government-funded programs, including your employment with Liberty Resources. Let's go a little more in depth on Liberty Resources whistleblower policy. Liberty's whistleblower policy protects employees who make good faith disclosures or accusations of fraudulent, wasteful, or abusive activity or wrongdoing practiced by anyone at Liberty. A reporting employee will not incur retribution. This means that if you disclose in good faith, you worry something might be happening, you will be safe from threats of retaliation, any acts of discrimination, or termination of employment, and that protection is covered by law. You may have noticed that the whistleblower policy covers employees reporting in good faith. What does that mean? Reporting in good faith means that you believe that a law, regulation, or policy has been violated, and you have reasonable cause to suspect this allegation would be true. It means that this report is made without malice or interest in personal gain. So whistleblower policies will not cover you if you have it out for a fellow employee and you're going to decide to falsely accuse them of fraud. In that case, the whistleblower policy does not cover you. Now, what if there's this nightmare scenario where you realize that you've done something that might be considered fraud? What do? Do you put it under the rug and hope nobody notices? No, we're all adults. We know that mistakes never age well. So we encourage people to self-disclose when you think you may have done something that may even appear to be fraud. So self or voluntary disclosure is when providers voluntarily report self-discovered evidence of potential fraud and abuse. Now, Liberty promotes self-disclosure because doing so exemplifies moral and lawful conduct, and consumers deserve access to quality, long-term programs that support their independence. Now, self-disclosure may feel like throwing yourself under the bus, but there are a lot of benefits to self-disclosure, especially if you self-disclose earlier rather than later. This will allow for us to internally investigate and address the origins of the issues. We can identify corrective action steps and preventative measures and mitigate any imposed costs and penalties in the future. So if you see something that looks like fraud or waste or abuse, what do? You can ask management or any Liberty employee for a fraud and abuse incident form that will be sent to me in quality management, and we will conduct an investigation and coordinate necessary resolutions. If you have a suspected report of fraud and abuse and you want to report directly to me, this is my email address and phone number. My name is Pascal Valet. I'm the manager at Quality Management at Liberty Home Choices. My email address is pascalvalet@libertyresources.org, and my phone number is 215-634-2000, extension 498. Thank you for joining us as we learned about fraud and abuse.